Welcome back to Operation Podcast, where we dive into the rewarding yet challenging journey of fatherhood while balancing demanding careers. Join us as we share real stories, practical advice, and meaningful conversations about being a present and an engaged father.
Well, awesome. We got kind of a really special episode. I'm here sitting across the table, sharing a glass of real fine whiskey with my dad. Awesome. He's been my dad for 36 years.
Yeah. How about that?
Thanks for being here, Dad.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. Why don't we talk about your dad?
All right. Well, my dad was a World War II veteran, and he was stationed, he was enlisted towards the end of World War II, spent a couple years in the U.S. at different bases, and then was shipped overseas to Morocco and ultimately Cairo, Egypt. And he worked in the accounting business office for the U.S. military. Would you like to hear more?
And where did he grow up?
He grew up in a little town by Wisconsin Dells called Mauston with an M.
So
little farm town.
Mauston, Wisconsin. He found himself in Cairo,
farm kid. His two older brothers, there were actually 7 in the family, 9 ultimately. 2 died as children on the farm. But 2 of his older brothers, one was stationed in the South Pacific, prisoner of war, and another was in the English Channel on a PT boat. And Dad was in a somewhat riskier role in an accounting office in Cairo, Egypt.
Joking aside, right? Making sure everybody was getting paid.
That's right. He said it was one of the most important roles in World War II.
Yeah. I would think everybody would assume the same thing.
That's right, yeah.
And then he met Grandma there?
He did.
What was Grandma doing in Cairo, Egypt?
So my mother, her parents were, her father was from the island of Malta, which is in the middle of the Mediterranean. And when he was a strapping young buck of 19, he decided to move to Cairo because that's where most of the employment was. And Malta is like an English colony, and at that time Cairo was too. So he decided to move to Cairo and work for his uncle. His original name was Caruana, which is a Maltese name, but he decided to change it to Pitts, Pitts, because it sounded more English. And he was a little concerned about moving to Cairo and people looking down on him as, this small islander. But if he had an English name, he'd have more respect, basically.
I'm assuming, how many years ago was this?
This was, early 1900s.
So to change a last name, a surname, back then is probably far different than what it is now.
Yes. But when you think about it, all the immigrants that came to the U.S., a lot of them from Norway and different countries changed their names as well. But in this case, he moved to Cairo and he met my grandmother, who was Greek. She was from Greece and she moved to Cairo for the same reason. Employment. I think that was basically a lot of why people moved around back then, was to find employment. And they proceeded to have children, my mother and her brother. And my grandmother died when my mother was 6 years old. So Mom ended up in a boarding school, Catholic boarding school. And pretty much her parents, because her father was a kind of a traveling sales guy, were the nuns at this boarding school. So that gives you kind of an idea of my upbringing. A mother that was brought up in basically a convent until she was 19. And then she ended up getting a job as a secretary in the British embassy. And my parents met when they were on a picnic. One time, both offices, accounting offices, got together for a picnic, the American office and the British office, and they met at this picnic, and I guess the fireworks went off.
Wow. So they were working in the same building
Not the same building, but there was a person in the American office that knew many people in the British office, and he's the one that organized the picnic
Okay.
along the Nile. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, speaking from even just my experience of deployments in a location that houses a lot of foreign troops, I mean, we all eat at the same place. We all use the same gym. It's an Air Force base, so obviously they have a pool that we all swim at the same pool.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, we just kind of organically meet each other, and it sounds like that's been going on for
They dated 4
generations.
times. And then Dad was sent back, and he actually asked her to marry him before leaving Cairo. And
How long had they known each other at that point?
4 dates.
4 days or dates?
Dates.
Oh, okay.
And my mother said, I think we should think about this, and said, why don't we correspond for a year? So they wrote letters back and forth for a year. And she said, if we still feel the same way after a year, then I will get on a ship and come to the U.S., which is what she did. She left everything behind and got on a ship by herself at 19 and
Wow.
came over. Then she did have a cousin in New York who helped guide her to get on a train, and she took a train to Chicago, and that's where Dad met her, at the train station in Chicago.
How old did you say she was? 19?
19 at that time, yeah.
Man, an international traveler before 20.
Yeah. Really.
I mean, I guess the times were different, but still, that's pretty young to... Man.
Yeah.
So did Grandpa meet her dad? Like, customary to have that kind of conversation, right? Do you know if that happened?
I'm trying to think how that worked. I'm pretty sure he did have a discussion, but not face to face, because
of course,
I think it was through correspondence. But he did meet her dad when they were married, and your aunt and uncle, my two older sibs, were young. They lived in Madison, and he came to Madison and stayed with them for 3 months.
Wow!
So he got to know my dad pretty well by then.
Wow, what a story! I mean, I've heard it. I've heard it different
bits and pieces.
Yeah, bits and pieces, but not all the way chronologically. So, yeah, that's really cool, man. And then, so they were married. They started having kids. And where are you in the lineup? I mean, I know where you are, but the listeners don't.
For those listening, I'm number 5, and I didn't know until probably college. I remember having a beer with your grandpa one time, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, Bob, sometimes surprises can really turn out wonderful. I wondered why there was 4 years between the next one and me. But yeah.
Wow, and you kind of lived that world a little bit, kind of foreshadowing your...
Well, I mean, my siblings would tell you that I was spoiled, but it's a lie.
Well,
it was a
speaking from an older sibling myself, I would say that that's probably inherently the case, and it's just the way the world spins, I guess. Wow. Well, cool story, kind of how they met, how they started raising a family, and he was a teacher, obviously working high school, universities.
He taught high school for a long time. When my oldest sister and my older brother were still quite young, that's why they went to Madison. He decided to get his master's, and that was tough. They were just broke, from what I understand. And he got his master's, and from there ended up getting a job at a high school in Eau Claire. And he taught there up until I was probably, I'd say, 8th grade, and then he moved on to the vocational school, the VOTEC, as the accounting teacher, business law and accounting.
And how long was he in Madison?
Madison, probably a couple of years, I think, to get his master's. And yeah.
Well, that's pretty fun, because I, for the listeners, I had lived in Madison, lived and worked there for 10 years. Beautiful city. I love it. I kind of had an interesting lens, because I saw most of the campus from a 911 perspective, responding to the students who Just had a little bit too much going on one night, but it was still just it's a beautiful city. Love the people I worked with. Little shout out to my former coworkers. Yeah, so let's kind of jump forward to your career path.
Sure.
You were kind of ended up in marketing.
Well, it was a long way to get there. Coming out of, while in high school, I really enjoyed wood shop a lot. I took, all the basics, accounting and chemistry and everything, but my favorite part of the day was sneaking off to that wood shop and working on a project and things like that. And I think I was pretty good at it. So coming upon graduation, I really had no clue what I wanted to do. I just didn't have a sense of what my skills were other than shop class. So I thought, well, I really enjoyed my shop teacher. Maybe I'll be a woodworking teacher, shop teacher myself. So first year I went to Eau Claire and took all the basics, basic classes, and then transferred to University of Wisconsin Stout. They had a really good tech program there. And I remember it was a blistering August to sign up for classes in the gym, no air conditioning. This was 1978. And the line for industrial education was a mile long. And it was hot. And I looked to my left, and there's a line called industrial technology. And there was just a few people in it. And I thought, in my logic, they both start with industrial. There's got to be some overlap somewhere. So I jumped in the shorter line.
It's probably in the shade and air conditioned. They got it all set up the right way.
Oh, yeah.
Had mojitos just on ice waiting for you.
Yeah. Not quite, but it was interesting because as I progressed through school and took some woodworking classes, I determined that as much as I love woodworking as a hobby, I don't think I could do it as a career, every single day type of thing. And I love kids, but I just thought, I thought this was my direction, but it's not really. So I started branching out and taking some other classes, and being in the industrial technology department, I took one called Introduction to Packaging Engineering. No idea what that was. And boy, it was really, believe it or not, quite interesting. And I ended up graduating with a concentration in packaging engineering. And before I graduated, I had a chance to do an internship with a major computer company out in Boulder, Colorado for 6 months. And
not a bad place for an internship.
The what?
Not a bad place.
Not a bad place. Oh, it was a great place. Some of my high school buddies that summer were working in Vail doing landscaping, and I'd go up on the weekends and we'd camp up in the mountains, and it was wonderful. Hard to get back to school. But I finished school, and that same company hired me, not as a packaging engineer, but as a manufacturing engineer. Both groups were in the same department. They really needed a manufacturing engineer, and, I really didn't know much about manufacturing either. I did take some courses, but I didn't feel confident in it. Well, the guy that hired me said, Bob, I went to Stout. I went through the same program you did. I got into manufacturing engineering, and it was just intuitive. I picked up on it, and he said, I see that in you. I can see you picking up on it. So go get him, Tiger. That kind of thing. So...
little unexpected mentorship.
Right.
Yeah.
So as my career progressed, a lot of that happened where I'd jump into different jobs, not really knowing that much about it, and just having to convince myself, you can do it. And, it got to the point where I got adept at it and got bored. So I'd want to move to another area. And basically, you can do it. So that's kind of, some people, I just envy those that leave high school, or even you. I think since second grade, you wanted to be a first responder of some sort. Mm-hmm. Whereas for me, it's just been a continuation, even after leaving that company, different jobs, trying different things. Just, I crave different things. I get bored with the norm. So anyway.
Well, I mean, you're teachable. And even in the world you came up in for employment and the world we live in now, that's still a valuable asset. I think any employer would be like, I don't care if they're the smartest person, if they're the wittiest, if they're the funniest, but if they're teachable, it seems like that's the biggest asset you could ask for as an employer. So,
and that's another, we will probably get into some of the things that I tried to teach you and your siblings, but part of it is never get too comfortable, never get too complacent with where you're at. Whether it's your decision or your company's decision, you may have to make a change, and just be okay with that. Be willing to accept something different, learn it, get really good at it, and either stick with it or try something else. But yeah, I feel bad for people that they think that's all they can do in their life, and when that goes away, they don't have anything to fall back on.
Mm.
It's kind of like people that retire with no plan. Now what do I do?
Yeah, well, and I've seen it too, where it's people who are eligible to retire but do not.
Right.
And they hang around. And in my field, it's quite obvious to see the people who don't have much going on in their life outside of their profession. Mm-hmm. So you worry about those. You worry about those people. And that's kind of a good segue too, because you entered a new phase of life yourself. Not only are you a grandfather now, 1, 2, 3, 4 times over, right? For the listeners, we just bought a daughter home last week. So
that's right. And 5 in December.
Yeah. So we're in the 2 under 2, and surprisingly, that's me knocking on wood. We're getting some pretty decent sleep compared to our first experience. So if the Holy Spirit is anywhere in this garage where we're recording, hopefully we can keep that wave going.
That's right.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what retirement has been so far. Because how far are you into it now?
I'm a month into it. And we'll probably talk about my post-corporate computer company career. After I left that company after 27 years, I worked for probably 5 small companies in a marketing extent. By the way, I haven't gotten into the marketing side of this yet, but of my 27 years, 8 were manufacturing engineering, and 17 were, is that the math?
I don't have the mental math
19
skill either.
Were marketing.
Okay, yeah, let's jump back into that real. Okay. So you went from packaging to marketing?
I went from packaging to manufacturing engineering. And then, but I always thought, if you really sit back and evaluate what your skill set is, in my case, I always thought the creativity and communication and organization were my 3 skills. There was no way I was going to be a physics major, and no way med school was in my future. So it took a while for me to figure it out, but once I did, I knew where to kind of pull the triggers and move the levers and that kind of thing on how to progress with it. So after 8 years of manufacturing engineering, and part of that was a manager on a manufacturing floor, I had an opportunity to jump ship and go into marketing. And it's a pretty significant change. For one, most of my manufacturing engineering career was at a plant here in Rochester. It's kind of a home community. You see the same people every day and that type of thing. I got assigned to a special project and did really well at it, enough that they recognized me to go present over in Europe on this marketing study that I did. And one of the people in Europe saw it and said, we have nobody here doing that kind of work. Would you be interested in coming to England?
Yes, I remember this.
And he offered me 6 months. And I said, well, at that time I've got 3 kids and my wife's getting her master's. I said, if you could make it a year, I'd probably consider it. And a couple of weeks later, he sent me an email and said, when can you come? I got you approved for a year. And then that year turned into 2 years and almost 3. But on that third year, they started laying people off over in England. And I told the director there, I said, don't assign me to a job if you're going to lay somebody off. Send me home. Mm-hmm. Take care of your own first, and then I'll find something at home.
Yeah.
And my boss was very good about it's interesting. When I came back to the States, I would have never gotten a job at corporate marketing with my background. A manufacturing engineer that dabbled in marketing. But the way my boss sold it was, I've got a Yank here with 2 years of international marketing experience, and he needs to be in a corporate office. So that got me a job with corporate. So I left the plant, the close-knit group I had at the plant, and ended up reporting to corporate. And that, sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for, because that was a tough life working for corporate. A lot of exciting times, but a lot of very tough times too. Yeah.
What were the tough times?
Well, the thing that really, what I got hired to do was be a project manager for a national rollout of a program, and super stressful. I was on the road a lot. The three of you were little. I remember I was in Atlanta. I had to do a educational program to inform a bunch of people what this program's going to be and what their roles were. And 4 o'clock the morning before I had this all-day session, your mother called in my hotel room and said, guess what? I'm pregnant with number 4. Totally unexpected. Well, I did not get any sleep the rest of that night. Of course, your mother didn't either. We weren't planning on this. So the next day, I'm just chugging coffee and trying to pull this thing off, which I managed to pull it off. But, man, it was tough. So then after that trip, I came home, and I had an office at the local plant, even though I didn't report there. And it was 7 o'clock, not unusual again, 7 p.m. And your mom called, and she said, I know you won't be home for supper again, so I'll bring it out to you, to the parking lot. So I met her in the parking lot. She opened the minivan door, and there were you 3 little ones, and she's pregnant, handed me my supper, and she said, I brought some storybooks along. You can read the kids their nighttime stories and eat your supper while you're doing it. And I thought, it was a kick in the gut. That was the first stage of, there's got to be a better life. And, the very next morning, I called my boss in Atlanta and said, this isn't going to work for me. If I have to work all these hours, I'm going to have to work from home.
How many hours are we talking?
Oh, gosh. I think that year I put in 3 months of overtime.
Wow.
So they were typically 14-hour days back then.
5
and
days
with
a
3
week.
little ones. It's like
5 days a week, 14-hour days.
Oh, and you can count weekends, working on weekends too,
man.
because it was a national project. There was no end to it. So he said, I'll do anything you need. You can work at home. And that's when we first set up that office in the unfinished basement. I had a sheet across instead of a wall, and eventually we added onto the house and put an office off the kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I
And
remember that.
Yep.
And then the creme de la creme office.
Yeah.
The office in the sky, right? Is that what the title
yes.
is? Yeah.
And then, so for those of you that don't know this, I built a treehouse years before for the kids.
Well,
Oh, yes. Brian often brings that up because he was old enough. Even at like 10 years old, that boy could swing a hammer. So I built this treehouse in the woods in our backyard, and the kids didn't use it that much. I had it wired, and I had a ceiling fan in there, and I even coerced the local charter communications guy to run a cable from the telephone pole to the treehouse. Remember that?
Yeah. Before modems and Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So
and hotspots even. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty primitive. but it worked. That became my office for the summer, and it was just a great time because, you've got 5 kids home from school and they're playing around. It's loud. I'm off the kitchen with an office. It just wasn't working. So I ended up in the treehouse. Yeah, and then you spent the summer there yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Once I abandoned it, you came home from school and...
Yeah, I lived in it for 3 months.
Yeah.
One of my brothers had overrun what was then my bedroom, so I wanted my own room and it wasn't possible anymore.
So you had a bedroom in the tree.
Yeah.
How nice. Yeah, that was great.
I want to go back a little bit to that season where you're kind of where your mind went, where, what is success?
Right.
Is success a monetary value? Is it time spent in the office? Is it relationships built? Or is it quality time at home?
Right.
And I'm asking straight out of pure curiosity, because, I've brought this up on this podcast a couple of times already, but, I have gone through an unsuccessful marriage in the past, like many people I'm sure have. And I feel like right now I'm living in a world of second chances. So I want to be sure that I'm spending as much time as I can with the wife that I have, with the kids that I have in the season that I'm in. So what was that learning experience like for you when you finally came to the realization, like, this time is slipping by too fast. I'm not going to get this time back.
Yeah, there were multiple stages, and I think I'm 67, almost 67 years old, and anybody younger that's pursuing their career and raising a family will face, guaranteed, challenges, multiple stages in your career and your marriage. And don't look at it with, rose-colored lenses. You've got to be realistic about what life is going to throw at you. And you have to be prepared internally for that. How are you going to handle it when a hurdle comes along? And unfortunately, many people don't handle it well. So I got thinking about one of your questions. And, as you start out as a single guy and you start your job, in my case, I was a single guy, manufacturing engineer. Sometimes I'd work all night because we'd bring in contractors and they do programming, and somebody would have to sit with them. Not security, but the project manager that was in charge.
Just
and
to
I'd be
make
there
sure
all night.
Not throwing a rager or what?
What's that?
Just to make sure.
No, not a rager. Trust me. The guy I always sat with, he was so boring. I can remember my chin hitting my chest so many times when it's like, oh no, not another all-nighter. But I had to get my feet wet. That's how you work to get your career going with them. And as I progressed in my career, I became more confident, got better at what I was doing, and my target was naturally a promotion. It's like, I want to make more money. I want to get higher ranked. I want to move up the ladder. Mind you, I'm still a single guy, no responsibilities other than my own self. But then a family starts, and there's interference type of thing. Now your concentration, you now have a split focus. It's like, okay, do I put as much focus on those promotions as I was thinking? That's why I went to school. That's why all this. But more importantly, there's other people involved now, and you start to think about it. So as the family starts to grow and your focus gets split, you've got to really divvy up your time. And most importantly, what's important to not necessarily you, because it's not self-centered anymore. You've got people depending on you. So as a single person working for those promotions, it's kind of a self-centered life. But when you get married and have a healthy marriage and start having kids, you're kind of taking the back seat now. That's my viewpoint. And the ones that don't take the back seat, that's where trouble arises. Kids don't see their dad, and hey, I was guilty of it. Mom brought supper to me at work, and that was one of my turning points. It's like something's got to change. So let's just say work gets more demanding. Family keeps growing. Maybe there's a tragedy somewhere in the middle. In my case, after that, your grandma died. I took it very hard when grandma died. She had a very long and terrible disease, and it was tough. One of my significant turning points, I haven't told too many people about this, but I worked remotely at the nursing home where she was. Pretty much all my siblings and my dad, and you guys even came down to visit while grandma was dying, and it was about a 3-week process. And we held a vigil. We just took turns all night long. 2 of us would stay at her bedside throughout the night. The next night, someone else would. During the day, we'd all be there. And then I'd run back to this office that they set aside for me so I could do my work. A lot of stress. And then it was a Sunday night, and there was a big meeting in St. Paul. I was in Janesville, Wisconsin, and I went up to Mom. She couldn't talk, could hardly communicate, practically comatose. I was hoping she could hear me, and I said, Mom, I'll be right back. I have to run up to St. Paul. I have to go to this meeting, and I'll be back tomorrow night. So I left.
For those unfamiliar with the distance between the two cities, how long is this drive?
Probably 4 or 5 hours, something like that. Yeah. I drove up in the dark, got a hotel, woke up, got ready for the meeting. My phone rang, and it was my brother, and he said, Mom passed. Boy, that was tough. I couldn't go to the meeting. I went to the meeting, and I just told him, I can't function. I'm sorry. We're going to have to postpone this, which I should have done anyway, but I thought it was so critical at the time. Here was the opportunity. My sister says, oh, it's easy. Bob, Mom was just waiting for you to leave so she could pass. It's like, well, maybe, but it doesn't help. I wanted to be there when she took her last breath. So that is in my craw. And that was a significant part in my life career. So after that, life just got really busy again, sports. Your mom even, there was a summer when both of us taught soccer, and I'd come home and check my emails and, just busy. Mm-hmm. And then my sister ended up getting cancer. This was probably 5 years after Mom died. And by the time they found it, it was stage 4. And I was very close to this sister. She was the next one in line from me. And her husband had to keep working, so after her surgery, she was at home. And this was in a town probably 4.5 hours from Rochester. And I decided I'd work remotely at their house. I told my brother-in-law, I'll stay with her, and watch her while I'm working. And she was mobile and everything, but she needed somebody there with her. The kids were off to school, and man, it was right in the middle of fall budget. This major project I was working on, and she saw me just working my tail off at the kitchen table. And at one point, I had my computer open, working a spreadsheet. I was on her landline talking to one group, and on my cell phone talking to my team at the same time. And she just walked by with such a pitiful expression and shaking her head. And when I got off the phone, she said, you have got to learn what's important in life. Mm. And that stuck. That's like the second time. It's like, wow, when am I going to start? But, when you get so far, when you've got 5 kids at home and they're dependent on you for financial reasons and security. And yeah, your mom worked as a nurse and she had a great job working part-time. We couldn't work full-time together. We vowed that somebody's going to be home with the kids all the time. So it was just really stressful at that time. And then I started thinking about this this guy that I met in England, that really struck me too. Another example of, are you going to either work yourself out of a marriage or work yourself to death kind of thing? And I don't know have we got time that I could read this
Let's
letter?
do it. Yeah, you brought some content with, and this is a letter, right?
Yeah, so I was working at this time as a marketing manager in the UK, and I worked in an office with many people. We had cubicles and some of us had offices. And I met this guy who sat just outside the office. He was from Scotland, just a really cool guy. Well, his name was John. I don't need to mention his last name. And John was always working. And then we had a really bad surprise, and it hit me so hard. I was compelled to write this letter to my colleagues back in the States. And as it turned out, a buddy of mine back in the States in the department I sent it to said, this letter has been transferred throughout the company as an example of work-life balance. So I'll just read it quickly here, but it really makes you think. So it starts out, Dear gang, I felt compelled to write this note because I think all of us can relate to the story I'm about to tell you about a fellow worker whom I've gotten to know as a good friend. Since I've been in the UK, I've met many people, a few of which I've considered a good friend. As I think about my friends, particularly those who work for the company, I see a great deal of similarity, regardless of their background or the country in which they work. I'd like to tell you about one of these friends, John. John is from Scotland, and although he sounds like Scotty on Star Trek, he's about a third his size. In fact, he's so skinny, you wonder what keeps up his pants up. I work with John in the marketing business here, and I've grown to respect his knowledge and his devotion to his job. In fact, that is one of the similarities I see in John with my other friends within the company, a personal drive to do the best he can at what he does. If that means working into the evenings and weekends, so be it, because John is extremely dedicated to his profession. As an example, a few months back, John had told me he was going to be out on vacation. Well-deserved, mind you. As I was working away at my desk, I was surprised to find a prof's note, that's our email system back then, from him. I called him at his house in Scotland and found that he had thought it best to stay home and catch up on some work, while his wife and 3 young kids went on vacation. He wasn't expecting any sympathy from me. He simply felt obligated to complete his work. I really felt for him and his family at that point. Certainly a person's job is important, but there has to be a balance. I know he loved his family dearly, but didn't know when to turn his attention in the right direction. Does this sound familiar? Well, about an hour ago, I received some news which I am finding hard to cope with. John died last night. John had been sickly for some time, and I often joked with him that he really needed to get some meat on his bones. As it turned out, John was more ill than any of us thought, and he died due to complications from heart surgery he had last week. I didn't even know he was in the hospital. I just thought he was sitting at his desk in Scotland working away as always. The reason I'm sending this note is to make you stop and take notice that we all have some John in us. We work hard at what we do and try to make an impact for the business. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't forget why and for whom we do it. It makes me ill to think how John had such little time with his 3 young children, and now he's gone, forever. I'd appreciate it if you'd take a minute out of your busy day, say a prayer for John's young family. When you're finished, reflect on your own and treasure every minute you have with them. Your friend, Bob. So that's the story of John. And again, life is going to throw a lot of stuff at you, and you have to be prepared for it. You have to set your priorities. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting. You mentioned your sister walking by you with that look of disgust, and she's probably in the mental state where, I mean, she must have been. How far advanced was her cancer at that point?
She probably died about 6 months later.
So she probably has this viewpoint of, oh, what would you call it? She's looking at life now.
Yeah.
In a different way.
Exactly.
A different perspective, like what really is important. And she's probably speaking this to you as a result of it running around in her head for however long it did. But yet then you have your coworker, same kind of health condition, total opposite end of the spectrum of priorities.
And you know what's amazing is you can get trapped in this situation. John died long before my sister did. I wrote that letter long before I was sitting at her kitchen table with my cell phone, her landline, and my computer. I had turned into John, not so much, to that extent, but close enough that it's like touching the flames without walking in them. And it just, wow, how did I get here kind of thing. It wasn't intentional, or was it? You end up getting these promotions. You end up taking on this responsibility. You end up having a family of 5. You end up having debt. You have to keep going. You're trapped kind of thing. So as a man that's almost 67, my intent of saying all this is keep your eyes on the road. If you don't think that road is taking you in the direction you want to go, look for a detour or do something. Have a backup plan, whatever it takes. But if your mother wasn't, totally understanding, she was my best cheerleader. She felt for me. She didn't have animosity or disdain for me for working so hard. She knew I was trapped. And what could she do except be my cheerleader? She was wonderful that way.
And she could bear the full weight of that anxiety that you come kind of overflowing.
That's the magic of your mother. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I married her is she is quite emotionally stable that way.
I was listening to some content earlier today about how it was a couple of pastors. They were talking to each other, and the one being interviewed said something about marriage. And he's like, your marriage is the most important relationship other than your faith with Christ. But your spouse was not built to take on 100% of your problems. Right. Community is the other piece of that.
Yeah.
And having a network of friends and all of that. But I mean, I know a couple of your buddies, some that you've grown up with, people that you've worked with. You've always kind of been surrounded by a good community of people. So I imagine it must have been the case.
All the way back to high school.
Must have been the case.
Yeah.
Throughout those working years too.
Yeah.
Kind of lean on each other in that.
Yeah, that was, it was hard, but it wasn't all, stress. There were many good times. My best times were with the family, I'll tell you that. There were some fun projects at work as well, but man, I just appreciated time. We'd get in that van and we'd travel all over the U.S.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the things that Mom and I wanted you guys to experience was get out of town, go experience something. And look at you with all of the experiences you've had going overseas and trips. And I mean, it's see the world.
Yeah.
My take on it is, and I've always thought this, if you think about the Earth's timeline and how short, if we make it to 100 years like your grandpa, man, that's incredible. Most likely a significant amount of people are not going to get that far. So you're only here for a short period of time before we move on to hopefully shake hands with Jesus and give him a hug. But while you're here, make the best of it. Don't ruin a family. Don't don't lose good neighbors that you should. Think about other things, which makes me think that one of the key things that I wanted all you kids to grow up with was empathy. Put yourself in the other person's shoes before you decide how you want to feel about them. And why can't we all just be friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to believe the best in people. And you feel like everybody's born that way. Well, depending on, how they're raised. Hopefully they have parents that show them a good quality of life as they're growing up, and they try to emulate that.
I know your mother did. I hope I did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you did. Well, there's, you talk about intentionality. I just think it's so interesting how maybe this was subconscious for me, but all of this explanation of your profession and how much time it took from you. I just think isn't it interesting how I ended up in the career I am, where there's a very clear cutoff. As soon as I get a replacement in to take my spot on the ambulance, the engine, the airplane, whatever, my job's done. I go home.
Well,
I don't
except
take any
possible
of it.
baggage you bring home with you, but
And that's another piece of it.
Yeah.
The stuff that you see, the stuff that you remember, but there's no phone calls, there's no projects, there's no emails. Some organizations that I've worked for are better at it than others, but I've made it. It's been pretty apparent to me that there's a number of reasons why I feel like I chose the career I have, and I wonder how much of that is a result of maybe what I saw. What I saw, but maybe didn't see growing up. I don't know. And that's not to point a finger of blame or anything. It's just a perspective that maybe I had that I didn't really put much stock into in the moment. And then somehow it just kind of followed me through life. And
I also remember you as like a second grader going to the fire department, and your eyes as big as that Chinese pug we had when you got to step onto that fire truck.
So. It's Trixie.
Poor Trixie.
Trixie.
Yeah, so long story short, 27 years with the company, and then my life changed for the better. The pressure was off. You were growing up by then. Carly, your sister, was going off to college. I was able to take my severance and invest in, it was during the recession, so we could put a down payment on some homes that were distressed and fix them up from my woodworking background. And you helped a lot, and rented them and ultimately sold them. And I worked marketing on the side for some other companies. It was one wonderful time being my own boss and being home when I wanted to be home.
Yeah. Yeah. Out of my friend group, more than half of us work for themselves. Their day is structured the way they want it. I'm not an example of that by any means, but I had a friend over just the other night, and he said that same thing to me. He's like, when I wake up, my day is however I want it to go. And his life's going to change soon because he's got a baby on the way too. We were just kind of talking about how, life's going to change. Life's changed for me. Life's going to change for him soon. And his, he said this comment, and I was kind of like, yeah, that's pretty cool to structure your day the way you want. And maybe you have the discipline to make it a constructive day. But I think about myself being like, I don't know if I really have a problem being told what to do, where to go, and what time to be there. But I also would say I have that desire to structure things how I want them to be structured. And my career field gives me the availability to do that.
Right.
Not so much now when we're balancing 4 nap times and changing 2 diapers. Did I tell you? I should have told you the other day. So I was changing my son's diaper, and I look over. We've got a mirror image of the 2 bedrooms, and she's over there changing her diaper too. And we just kind of look over. It's like, let's see who can finish first. Yeah,
that's great.
No, it's good. You, like we said earlier, you're in a season of grandfatherhood. You're in a season of retirement. I'm sure you got all the time in the world to look back, feel a little melancholy, look back at your experiences, and now you're that grandfather role where you.
Yeah. One of the things if I ever get into a situation that I just don't want to think about, and I've told your mother this, that's a door I'm not going to open. The wind may blow it open every now and then and bring back some things that I would prefer not to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But typically I'll keep that door closed. So the advantage of that for me is post-professional career. I mean, I've done things afterwards, but I've got nothing but fond memories of when you kids were growing up and the things that we would do and raising chickens together. And did you mention the pig?
How could I forget about the pig?
Oh, yeah.
The pig that ate the legs off our dining room table.
Yeah, that didn't go well. And the cupboards, yeah.
Didn't it also, I swear I got a phone call from you saying you saw him mount our female Labradoodle.
Yes. She hated him for that.
They were never in the same room after that, right?
Well, I took the Labradoodle aside and said, Rosie, all men are pigs, especially that one. So, yeah. That was a mistake. I saw an ad for a Vietnamese, what do they call them? Pig. The small pigs. Thought,
teacup? Is it? I don't know. Potbelly?
Potbelly pig.
Okay.
Yeah. And I thought it would be like a piglet most of its life, but don't be fooled. And it was only $25, and you know how I like a good deal.
Yes, I got that gene.
So, yeah. So, Mom, when I brought the pig home, she was not too keen on the pig. Yeah.
I can just about imagine, I can just about imagine my wife's response. Well, first off,
don't do it.
I don't think there's a space in this house, especially this garage, where I could keep a pig. I mean, we live on a postage stamp. At least we grew up in a house with what 4 acres ish,
almost
3.5, almost. Okay, yeah, with some woods, and we don't have that. Not yet.
Yeah, a pig wouldn't do well here.
No,
didn't do well at our house.
It would crush it in popularity with the neighborhood kids, though. Yeah. All 10,000 of them.
Oh, speaking of that, Brian. So, Nick had fall football practice and games out at the soccer fields, and everybody brings their dog on a leash. Well, we brought Arnold the pig. And talk about people looking. They're like, is that a pig? Yeah. All the kids would run over to pet the pig, and pretty soon all Nick's teammates and things are all looking at the pig during the game, and the coach is yelling at him, quit staring at that pig and play ball. Yeah. So he didn't last long. We gave him to a farmer.
Did you actually give it to a farmer? Or is that just what you
No, it's not like he joined the circus. And
I was thinking he got sliced up and put on someone's
the lady that
eggs or something.
Took him had a hobby farm, and she loved the pig. We went out to visit, and he had it made out there.
Love that.
So, yeah. Happy
worked well for him in the end, I guess.
That's what?
Incest worked well for him in the end.
Yeah, Rosie never forgot him.
Huh. Well, let's kind of finish with talking about wisdom earned through time, the season of grandfatherhood you're in, and the legacy that you want to leave your grandkids. Because I've had some people on here who, some are preparing for retirement, some are there, some are welcoming grandkids, and I wonder from your lens now, fathering 5 kids, and now you've got 4 grandkids and a 5th on the way. Is being a grandparent a second chance? Is it an opportunity to take your refined self? What is being a grandparent?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a second chance, because honestly, as a father, in my mind, I did all I could at the time and under the circumstances I was faced with.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that worked out for all five of you. You know, I so enjoy all of your company. We have such great times together. And I think that, I guess with the grandkids now, the pressure's off. You know, everybody says that, oh, you can go visit them and then say goodbye and leave them crying with their parents.
Or
And
screaming.
I'm not kidding. That is a nice thing. But it's like there's no pressure. You can just spend time with these little ones and enjoy them. You don't have to worry about, am I going to, actually, I'm sorry to even bring that up. A lot of people still have to worry about, how am I going to pay the bills and everything else. In your mother and my case, we've reached the point now where the pressure's off, and it's really a good feeling just to reflect back on life, and all I keep in my mind now are the positive moments of raising you guys. Like I said, I haven't opened this door for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Decided I'd open it tonight to help up and coming fathers, to kind of shock them a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. I mean, it's such an attribute to be a hard worker, but you have to be able to restrain yourself if possible, and kind of channel that hard work more so to your family and less so to work, in my mind, because work will swallow you up. Don't get yourself entrapped like I did. The other thing that I'd like to bring up is, in raising kids, and I see that with you guys, one of my points I wanted to make is to make you confident in yourselves. I wasn't real, I mentioned back in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to be. And actually, my dad had to work a lot too. We didn't make peanuts as a teacher back in the 60s and on up with 5 kids. So dad worked night school, worked during the summer when most teachers had the summer off. And he worked very hard. And hence, the only times I got to hang out with Dad is when we were remodeling our old house. He needed help, and I was the youngest. So. But back to the point, I wanted you guys to grow up to be confident, not cocky. Mm. I've seen a lot of people in my career that are just cocky and obnoxious. And yeah, they're confident, but it's more cocky than confidence. And they're just not pleasant people. I just don't like that personality trait, and I chose to try to teach you guys to be more confident than cocky. And I see that in you guys. You're all hard workers. You're all confident. You're raising families. You're working hard in your jobs. I mean, I couldn't ask for more. You're Christian people. It's great. You appreciate life. So I guess the big thing is, don't screw it up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of, I would echo that. I would say I got a lot of great lessons from both of you growing up. And it's, being the oldest and being the first one out of the house, I didn't get a great chance to connect with the 3 youngest siblings with the gap that we had, and now as adults kind of making up for that, which is really cool.
Yeah, it sure is to see you guys together.
And then and seeing them as aunts and uncles now that's really cool.
Yeah. I was going to say too, Brian, one of the things it's one thing when I talk about family, it's not just your kids, of course, it's your spouse. And for men to be observant of the needs of their wife. It's easy to take advantage of that situation. Oh, I just worked a 14-hour day. Why don't you put the kids to bed? All that stuff. It's back in the early days, like my parents' generation, even though my dad wasn't so much like that, but I've seen many parents where the mother has her roles, the father's role is bringing home the bacon, and they never really crossed or helped each other out that way. And that is so important, because marriage is, I liken it to a gas gauge. When your gas tank's on full, or when your marriage is on full, your relationship is wonderful. You're like soulmates. But as with time, that gas gauge will maybe get down to the halfway mark. Your marriage may go down to the halfway mark, and now all of a sudden it feels like you're just roommates. What happened? How do I fill that tank up to full again to be back to that soulmate relationship? Well, God help you if you don't fill that tank up and it starts to get down to empty, because that's when you're cellmates. And that's an ugly position to be in. So you better figure out fast, how do I fill that tank up again and turn this relationship around? So again, respect your spouse, love your wife, treat her like a queen. It's about giving, not receiving.
Yeah. I mean, it's always easy to see the queen in my wife, especially now. She wakes up every 3 hours to feed our infant, goes back to bed.
Yeah, she is a wonderful gal.
Yeah. Very, very easy to see that. Well, Dad.
Yeah. How'd we do?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for sitting here and chatting with me. Yeah. I'm glad that this could, we've had talks. Like we've sat down and we've chatted, and just like any father-son does and has done. But it's cool. I kind of got this idea. It's like, why don't we just record one of these talks?
Yeah.
Put a little bit in a tumbler and see where the night takes us. So thanks for sitting down and chatting with me.
You're welcome, my son.